No questions? Okay, feel free to stop me at any time. I'll be happy to answer your questions, or you can put them in the chat or raise your hand and I will stop every once in a while. Okay. Okay, so we're going to start tonight in the team restrictions. So this is normally set up by a branch office, but you can do it at the club level as well. To find the team restrictions, you go under settings and team restrictions. So they do carry forward from year to year. To edit them, you would click the three dots and click edit, and then you can make any changes in there. When you are setting them up from scratch, you would click add. And you can set up a basic team restriction and then copy those ones. It saves you a little bit of time. And then just do the one-offs. So maybe you're all of your U15 house league is a base level of team restrictions that you need to set up. So I can look for U15. Maybe I want to add another one, maybe my U13 base restrictions that I'm going to, base restrictions are going to be the same. So I can set up them the exact same way. I'm able to copy them afterwards. So maybe I want to set up my U15. I'm going to copy them for my double A's and just make it the small adjustments into, but for the base amount, everything else remains the same. So again, it's just a little bit of a time saver. So we do have different sections of the team restrictions that you can set up. So under the general settings, we do set up a few of them for how many people are on your team. You can set the number of maximum people that are trying out for your team, maximum release players, maximum affiliate import, and active players. Now, all of this does get added up into the player allotment. So if I'm going to put in 20 people here, all of these ones has to add up no more than 20. So again, so just make sure that you're putting the correct numbers in. So if you have, say, 17 on a team, maybe your affiliate players, you have another 15 players that you're going to be calling up. You might have another rostered player or released or tryouts. Make sure all of these numbers do add up to this number. Okay. Now we have settings over here that are called active or enforced. So if I leave these as an active restriction, it's going to allow me to put them on the team, even though I'm violating one of the restrictions. It's just going to give me a warning message. If I put it as an enforced and I try to add an 18th active member, it's not going to allow me to add them. Okay, so do you understand the difference between a forced and an active role or in the team restrictions? Okay. So you also have some other restrictions on protection dates and release dates. So you can set them up as yes or no, that a player's registration date needs to be protected, yes or no, as well as their release date. If you charge for a team creation, you can set a dollar amount in here. This is, I only seen a few branches use this, but it is available if you want to. You can't invoice through this, but you can do a report and then send it to the teams so that they can pay. We do have restrictions that maybe they have to have have a card in the system. So they must have a previous registration or been played before in order to be on this team. You can also have restrictions on their jersey numbers, or if they need to have a registration on file in order to be rostered. We have restrictions on if you want notifications on every change in the team, as well as minimum and maximum. So by default, it will go by the category that is set up for that age group. But if you allow over or under age for that player, you can set up those ages. Now that is for active players, and we also have a section for affiliate players, what their ages could be. We do have one called override validation of primary team. This means they can be double carded and be primary on 2 different teams. Okay. We now have another restriction that the qualifications have to be valid until the end of the year. If they're, say their coaching certificate expires halfway through the season, they would be in violation of this team restriction. And depending whether or not you have it as enforced or just a warning, is whether or not they are able to add them to the team. There is default active roster lock dates, but you can configure them yourself. You can set up background check information or restrictions. This allow NRP share. I'm not sure if I talked about this in one of the sessions yet, but there are different types of transfers. One of the options is called an NRP, which stands for a non-resident player. This is actually a Pacific one from hockey, where Ontario, they have NRP players that are only allowed, and there's only allowed to be certain NRP players on a team. Doesn't mean you can't use this one, but if you do a transfer type as NRP, a share does get put on automatically. It expires after a year, and you would have to set up a team restriction allowing that transfer to be part of your team. Okay. We do have a section on how the roster does get printed. So you can go through all these different ones. They have ones for if you want to include affiliate players on the team, imported players that are only approved, or you can have it as anyone that is released as well. And the bottom section, you can add qualifications for your coaches and your players. So if I click add, maybe I want to have all my players have to have respect in sport. So I would search for that qualification. I would pick the position. And if I had a few different qualifications, I could either set that they all are mandatory or at least one of them is mandatory. And again, I can either enforce it or it's a warning. So you would have to go through all your different positions in order to set them all up for this. So once you do have them all set up, you would click create. Okay. Again, I'm in the testing, so apologize if there's an error. But is there any questions about setting up team restrictions? Okay, so let's go over to creating some teams then. To find the team section, you go under Manage and go to Teams. Now, because it's the first year in the system, you will have to set your teams up from scratch. We do have a rollover from past seasons that does save you a little bit of time. But for this year, we're going to create our teams. We're going to click Add, and we can either do one team at a time, or we can click Create multiple teams. So let's look at creating one team. So I'm going to give that team a name. I have to give it a short name. I can put a fee in here. I'm going to select my division. If I know the information at the time of creation, I can put the home and away colors in. I could enter a sponsor name or tournament number. I do have to put in the address type. So by default, it will normally just say main address, and you can add that. Now, if the team is for a certain activity period, so if you have a camp or you have winter baseball or something like that, which is not part of your regular season, you can set up a period and add that team to that period. But by default, we could just leave it. And click Next. Now, if you want to add a team contact information, you can do so now. If I start to add this, I do have to add all the mandatory fields in. So if you do not have that information at this time, you can skip this step. Okay, make any adjustments needed by clicking Edit. And when you're ready, you click Create. So if I go back to my list, I now have another team, and it's in draft mode. Okay. Okay, let's try making multiple teams. So I'm going to click to add a team. I'm going to give it a name, category. Now I can either duplicate it, or I can click to add a team again. So if I copy it, it's going to keep all my information. So I can just quickly go in and change the necessary fields. I can keep going. I can also remove it if I don't need it, and I click Create. Is there any questions about creating teams? Okay, so let's go into one of our teams. So from the top, we're going to see information about our team. We're going to see what organization they're in, the team number, the category, the status of the team. We're also going to see a table. So this is going to, as you're populating your team and rostering them, you're going to be able to see this table at the top and have a breakdown of male players, female, prefer not to describe, prefer not to say, and give a total for each of the different types of players. Now we do have one called pending deficiency. This is for a member that has flags on their profile, so there is missing information, whether it's their address is not confirmed, maybe they've not signed the waivers, or there's something on their profile, so their profile has not been confirmed. I'm going to show you where you're going to find those flags, and anyone that is pending deficient cannot be approved on a roster until those flags are clear. Okay. From the bottom part of the teams, we can expand each of the sections to go in and roster the players and see information. From the team information tab, we're going to be able to see the information that was set up at the beginning for that team. Again, you can make any edits if needed. If you've added a contact, it's going to be there. If not, you can add it now. And you're also going to be able to see logs on this team or comments. So when you're going through the team approval process, you might send it in for approval. For whatever reason, it gets rejected. Your branch office can add a comment about that and say they're missing whatever course in order to be approved. Or you can add a comment saying, could you please look at this individual that's not been rejected? I think it's all clear now. And it's going to get a history of all the comments that have been added. The logs are going to show you for all the times it changed the status of the team. So it's going to be time stamped. So you're going to be able to see any of the changes to the status. The settings tab, this is going to show you all the team restrictions that have been set up for this division. So from time to time, you may want to come here to verify that you're matching all the thing that's been set up for you. You can also click here to verify rules. Now, if there is a warning against any of the team restrictions, this blue verify box will turn red. You can click it. It will take you to the settings here. And if there was a warning, one of these would show up as a yellow box. You're going to be able to click on it, and it's going to show you the players or bench staff that has a warning against them. Okay. Is there any questions about any of that? Okay. So let's roster some players now. So I'm going to go into my active roster. I'm going to expand it from the right-hand side. I'm going to click add. Now we do have a few different options for the tabs that you can find the players. I can also hide any members that are already on a team. So I can start to put in first name, last name, or their participant ID number. I can do partials as well, or I can just click search, and it's going to give me a list of players that are by default in that division. So I would click to add, click next. Now, because when I did my catalog setup, I asked for a position for this one. So it's going to let me know what player position they requested. So I can either click it and it's going to automatically put it in, or I can use the drop down to select the position. Now, if they're an import or tryout, I can click those. If not, I can click next. And now they've been added to the team. So we do have a quick view option as well. So if I click the circle with the plus line, all my players in the active section are going to open. So maybe I need to check to see if they have a certain qualification or if they signed the waivers. So I could go into the qualification section, double check, go to the next tab, double check. As I'm doing that, if this participant is all done, I don't need to do anything more. I can either erase them, or if I click minimize, it's going to go up to my quick view history. So I can continue working. I might want to add more players. When I open my history again, all the tabs that I have added, we're going to be there. Or from the left-hand side, when I'm done with them, I can close all the tabs at once. So the other ways that you can add players to teams. So I can search by team. Now, being the first year, I don't have any other ones in here in the test site, but you would be able to click on other past teams and you're going to get a list of their players, and you can select which ones you're going to have. You can also do a search by date-based range. So I can put in a date range. And it's going to find all the players within that range. Now the search and branch, it is permission-based. So this is just a little shortcut that we have every once in a while, a branch, it's usually for our higher up teams. They need to transfer somebody really quickly, get them on the team because they're playing that night. So I would be able to search and branch, and it kind of combines the transfer of that and adding to the team in one step. But again, it's permission based on who can do that. And the last option is we have a validate member. So let me, I'm gonna pick a member here. So I do have to use the participant ID number in order to search for them. I can search and say whether or not they're an affiliate player or an active player. I can also validate them as a coach or player. So I'm going to validate them, and it's going to either give me a warning message and tell me why I can't add them to the team, or it's going to say they're valid for the team and give me a link to add them. So anytime you are having trouble finding a player or a bench staff, you can validate the member and you can find out the reason. Maybe they need to be transferred in. This one is they've already been rostered to this team, so I can't re-roster them. But sometimes it'll tell me that the age category is incorrect, or they're missing a qualification. Now, this validate member, you can also do from a person's profile. So if I go into the member's profile, let me just find one. So if I'm going in the member's profile, from the actions button, I can validate the member. Now, if you remember, I just said in the teams, you had to search by participant ID. Because we're in the member's profile, the ID is already grayed out for you. Now I'm going to select the team. Again, I would validate them either as an active or an affiliate, a player, or a bench staff. And it's going to let me know that the reason I can either add them or tell me that they're good to go. Okay. In this case, they've already been rostered as a primary for another team, so I can't add them. Is there any questions about that? So this would be the same for each section. If I'm going to add my affiliate players, I would do it the exact same way. Expand that section, click add, and search for the member. And the same goes for bench staff. So I would just click add, find the member, add them, and I would add the position for the coach. Now, if I wanted to update all the jersey numbers and the positions in a bulk option, I can go to Actions and edit my roster. So I'm going to be able to change the position if needed. And maybe I want to add my home and away jerseys in. So the other thing that you can do from each section, so right from my active roster, affiliates, I can do it from my bench staff, etc. By expanding it, I can go to Actions, and now I have a communication. So I can send communications just to this targeted group. I could download, make a contact list. And so anytime you're sending a communication, you're always going to have this option of downloading and make a contact list. I can expand it. I can remove anyone that I don't need to send a communication to. I could add, if I needed to add more participant, use their ID, or I can search by their name and birth date. When I do send a communication, I'm going to put a title in. I'm going to type my message. I do have to accept the terms and conditions. So this is a Spordle ID function. So this, and it's not for the purposes of promotions or third-party promotions or any research. Okay, so it is for baseball communications only. Now, when you do send a message, it will come from a no reply email address. So we've whitelisted all the email addresses that come from a Spordle ID. If somebody does reply to that email address, it will go to your personal email. So whatever I'm logged in as, that is where that email will reply to. So when I'm going to the communication system, only in ones in my inbox have been sent with inside Spordle ID. So I will not get anything coming from outside of Spordle ID. Does that make sense? Okay. So again, when you are in the team section, oops, you can do it from each of the sections. So if I send a communication from the team officials, it's only going to capture those. If I want to send for all of my team, I can do it from the actions button at the top, and I can send communication. So this will pick up all of my active, my affiliate, my bench staff, etc. So again, we do have the option to download the communication or remove anyone that's not there or we don't need. Okay. Now, when you finish rostering all of your players and bench staff, you can submit your team for approval. To do that, go to Actions, and you can submit for approval. Now you can add a comment if you want to, and I'm going to submit. So you can see the status is now changed to pending approval, and that my player statuses have also changed. Let me just jump into the other team for a second. So you see this column here where they have the players' names. If there's any red flags listed here, this one is an unconfirmed profile, but it could be an address that needs to be verified. There's a flag for missing the ethnicity status or birth country. Waivers could need to be signed. So all of those flags here, when I submitted for approval, I got a pending deficiency status here. So if I resubmit for approval. It will let me know that which player it has an invalid status. Now I can bypass it and I can still submit for approval. But again, this one will be flagged as pending deficient and they will not be able to be approved on the roster. In order for them to get approved, all of the flags here would need to be cleared. So if I go to the member's profile, he's missing some documents and he needs his address verified. So let's verify his address. And I'm going to validate his documents. Let's pretend he had his documents there. And I'm going to confirm the member's profile. So when I go back to the team, let's refresh this. You can see the flag is now missing here. You will also notice the pending deficiency has not changed. The reason for this is it has to be a manual override for this. So your branch office, when they're approving it, you can resubmit the team for approval. They will have to go in and approve manually to change that status. Do you have any questions about any of that? No? Once the team is approved, so I'm going to approve the team. So you can see the status is now approved. From the actions button, I'm able to print the roster. Sometimes it seems to take a minute. Okay, I'll let that run. When it opens, I'll show you what it looks like. Does anyone have any questions while we're waiting for that to open? So just as a reminder, if I did have that team rejected and I wanted to find out why, I would go into my comments section and the person that rejected it could have put a comment in here. And this is where I would find out the reason. And you can see now that I have timestamps for all the changes. And this is what the roster does look like. So again, it depends on the team's restrictions, how it gets set up, but this is generally what a roster looks like. So we started talking about the communications. I showed you how you can use it through the Teams function, but let's go to a member. So maybe I want to update some of my members. I might want, sorry, let me go back to, okay. In Teams, I know again, this is going to be your first year, so you won't be able to do this, but in future years, you can change the season and you will be able to pull up rosters from last year and do the exact same steps in or sending communications to the teams from past years. So you might want to invite them all to the rep tryouts or something, but that's a way of doing it. In the members section, maybe you want to email people that have not registered for this season yet. The way to find that out is, if you remember, I said, if a person registers for a season, gets rostered to a team, or has done a clinic, they get a member type stamped for that current season. If there's no member type on the person's profile, I can click the no member type. I'm going to take out my. So I'm going to find members that are not registered. So maybe I can either narrow my search down to a certain age group, so I can target, and maybe I can fill some of my teams. From the list of ones I get, I can either select the page, or I can use the little arrow and I can select all. The side panel will open, and from actions, I can send a communication. So again, I can do this up to about 500 emails at a time. The email address that it's going to go to is the primary one in the overview tab. Now, if there's no email address found here, it will look in the contact section, but this is where all your communications will be sent to. The other way you can use the communication tool is actually within the communications module. So if you remember when we talked about the organization, the general, any users that are listed, there might be the club registrar or the club admin, or you might have a president or something that has access to Spordle ID. Their user setup is set up here. Or you have the staff tab. So when I'm going to send a communication and I compose, if I select organization, that is where it's pulling from. Any users that are in setup for that organization, and anyone listed as a staff member. So again, I can remove anyone I don't need to. I can always make that contact list, or I can click next to create my message. Okay. If I select participant, oops. One second while I log back in. So if I select participant, I can search for members that do belong to my zone, and I can send them emails. For the emails that you do receive, you can make some favorites for them, and you can archive them or see the ones that you've sent. Okay. Is there any questions about the communication tool? No? Okay. Have we talked about transfers yet? I can't remember if I went over transfers, so let's go to so when you're transferring, you're always doing it from the club that's bringing the person in. So I'm going to click Manage, and I'm going to go to Members. And I'm going to look for a member. I do want to, when I'm searching all of Baseball Alberta for the members for a transfer, make sure you're using the third radio button. So include all members of all organizations. So I'm going to click search. When I find the member that I want to transfer in, I'm going to click the side panel, and I'm going to go Actions and Request Transfer. So I do have 3 different types of transfers I can do. It's a permanent transfer. You can share the profile with another organization, or again, you do have that non-resident player. If you remember, if you use the non-resident player as the transfer type, it does have to be set up as a team restriction to allow that transfer type to be rostered on a team. So for this one, I'm going to share this one. I can set it up so it automatically shares for a certain time period. Maybe I'm sharing them so they can go to a camp, or they're allowed to share for a year. I'm just going to put a date in so that it would automatically remove the share from the profile after that date. I'm going to select a reason. Now you can set up a target team. So if you wanted to, it's a little bit of a time saver. If you're transferring them in and you know what team you're going to be rostered on and your teams are created, you can select the drop down for it, so it automatically adds them to the team once the transfer is approved. You can add some details if you need supporting documents with it. Maybe they're moving, so they might need a proof of residency or any of the other forms that are required. You can add it here and you would submit. Okay. To find your transfers, you can either go to the members profile and you can look under the history tab and you can find the transfers. But if you go to tasks and transfers, by default, it's going to have action required is checked off. A lot of times you won't have the action, so you can uncheck it. You can check to narrow your search, maybe see which maybe they're closed or rejected. Sorry, I thought I had a transfer there. But this is where they would be. Is there any questions about that? No? Okay, so we've talked about how to roll over, how to create teams one at a time or multiple, how to add people to the teams, as well as how to do some transfers and the catalog, the communications. So that's what I was covering for tonight. Thursday night, I'm going to go over all the reports that are available to you and give you some tips on some of them. But this is open from now if you have any questions or there's something else in any of the sections that we've covered that if you have any questions. Sean, you're all good? Okay. Okay, well, maybe I'll see you guys on Thursday night and we can talk reports. Thanks. Have a good night.